I didn't know my life was about to change forever that night. Not in a dramatic way, not with screaming or doors slamming. It changed quietly through a phone screen, a location pin, and the way my boyfriend's hand froze in midair. 2 weeks ago, I learned something that reshaped the way I see trust. Sometimes the truth doesn't come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from patience, from paying attention, from letting people reveal themselves. My boyfriend told me to relax. He said he was out with a friend all night. I believed him. I was sitting alone on our couch, the TV playing something I wasn't really watching, scrolling mindlessly through my phone when a story popped up on my screen. It was posted by his friend. Pajamas, a glass of wine, a book, alone. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m. I stared at it longer than I want to admit, because my boyfriend had told me he was with this friend. And yet here she was, clearly at home, clearly alone. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront him. I replied, "All right," to his earlier text and forced myself to breathe. Something inside me whispered, "Wait." When he came home after 2:00 a.m., he kissed my cheek like everything was normal. He told me the bar was crowded. He said he lost track of time. He said he was exhausted. I nodded. I smiled. I listened. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, while I was still sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, a message came in from someone I never expected, his friend's boyfriend. Attached was a screenshot, a location share, timestamp 2:47 a.m., address, an apartment complex across town. Not the bar, not anywhere near our home. When I showed my boyfriend the screenshot, he went pale. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the table. In that moment, before he said a single word, I already knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a late night. This was the beginning of the end. And what I didn't know yet was that this was only the first crack in a story that had been breaking long before I ever noticed. I was 26 when I met him. At the time, I wasn't looking for anything serious, at least not consciously. I had a steady job, a small but comfortable apartment, friends I trusted, and a routine that felt safe. Love was something I thought would happen eventually, not something I was actively chasing. We met through mutual friends at a birthday party. Nothing cinematic, no instant sparks. Just a crowded living room, cheap music playing from a speaker, and him standing near the kitchen counter, laughing at something someone said. I remember noticing his smile first. It wasn't flashy. It was familiar, easy, like someone you felt you already knew. We talked that night about work, about travel, about nothing important and everything at the same time. When I left, he walked me to my car. Didn't try to kiss me. Just asked if he could see me again. I liked that. It felt respectful, grounded. We started dating seriously a few months later. Slow dinners that turned into long walks. Inside jokes that only made sense to us. Text messages that felt like small check-ins rather than constant surveillance. He was attentive, steady, affectionate in a quiet way. I trusted him easily, maybe too easily. After about 2 years, we moved in together. It felt like the natural next step. We split expenses fairly. We built routines, Sunday grocery runs, movie nights, plans for trips we kept saying we'd take next year. We talked about marriage in that vague, hopeful way people do when they assume the future is guaranteed. His family was polite to me. Not overly warm, but welcoming enough. His mother liked to remind me how independent her son was, how much he valued freedom. I took that as pride, not warning. For the most part, our relationship felt solid. We weren't perfect, but we communicated, or at least I thought we did. Looking back now, I can see the small shifts, the changes that didn't seem big enough to question at the time. He started going out more. Girls' night, he'd say casually, even though it used to be something that happened once or twice a month. Suddenly it was every week, sometimes more. He'd come home late, always with the same explanations. Lost track of time. The bar was crowded. One more drink turned into 3. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? 3 years together builds a certain confidence. You assume honesty becomes the default. There were moments I brushed aside. Him turning his phone face down. Him taking calls in another room. Him being just a little more distant when he came home late. Nothing concrete, nothing I could point to without feeling paranoid. And that's the thing about betrayal. It rarely announces itself loudly. It slips in quietly, disguised as routine. By the time that Friday night arrived, the night that story appeared on my screen, the foundation had already been cracking. I just hadn't noticed how deep the fractures went. At least, not yet. After that Friday night, I couldn't unsee the patterns anymore. It was like once a curtain had been pulled back, every small detail suddenly carried weight. I replayed the past few months in my head, not obsessively at first, just cautiously. I remembered how often he'd said he was going out with friends, how girls' night had gone from an occasional thing to a standing weekly ritual, how he'd started coming home past 2 in the morning with the same tired explanations, delivered in the same calm tone, as if repetition could turn them into truth. At the time, I had told myself I was being mature. That trust meant not interrogating someone you loved. That relationships fell apart when people started policing each other's movements. But now, trust felt less like maturity and more like blindness. The air between us changed subtly after that night. He acted normal, too normal. He still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still asked about my day, still laughed at the same jokes. But there was a distance in his eyes, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. I didn't accuse him. I didn't ask to see his phone. I watched. I noticed how his phone was never left unattended anymore, how he stepped into the hallway to take certain calls, how his answers became shorter when I asked about his plans. His friends started to feel different too. Awkward smiles, conversations that stopped when I entered the room, little pauses that made my stomach tighten. I wondered if I was imagining it. I wondered if my mind was looking for problems that didn't exist. And then Saturday morning happened. I woke up to a notification from someone I barely spoke to, his friend's boyfriend. We'd met a handful of times at group events. He was easygoing, polite, not the kind of person who stirred drama. His message was short, careful. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but I thought you should see it. The screenshot that followed made my chest constrict, a location share. Time-stamped 2:47 a.m., an address across town. I didn't recognize the app at first. I had to look twice. His girlfriend and my boyfriend shared it, apparently for safety. Safety! The irony nearly made me laugh. When I looked up the address, my hands started shaking. It wasn't a bar. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a residential building. Someone's home. As I waited for him to wake up, coffee cooling untouched in my mug, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not heartbreak. Something colder, something steadier. A realization that whatever this was, it wasn't accidental. It wasn't a single bad decision. It was a choice, or several. And I was standing at the edge of a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to hear, but knew I couldn't ignore anymore. By the time he finally came out of the bedroom that morning, the sun was already high. I had been awake for hours. He looked tired, groggy, like someone who believed the night before had passed without consequence. He walked straight to the kitchen, poured himself coffee, and sat across from me at the table, scrolling through his phone as if nothing in the world had shifted. "Morning," he said casually. "Morning," I replied, matching his tone. For a few minutes, we sat there in silence. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside, his thumb flicking up and down the screen. Then I said it, slowly, calmly. "Your friend's boyfriend reached out to me this morning." His eyes lifted from his phone, just for a second. "Yeah?" he said. "About what?" "He said his girlfriend was worried about you last night," I continued. "She couldn't reach you, so she checked your location." I watched his face carefully. There it was, just a flicker. Panic. Guilt. Something sharp and fleeting that disappeared almost instantly. "Oh," he said, forcing a small laugh. "Right, yeah, my phone was acting weird. Barely had signal." "Makes sense," I said softly. I paused, just long enough to let the silence press in. "Although it's strange," I added, "that your location showed you at an apartment complex across town, around 3 in the morning. The color drained from his face, not gradually, instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. "What?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward him. "This," I said, "is your location at 2:47 a.m. That's not the bar you mentioned." His hands started shaking. His phone slipped from his fingers and hit the table with a sharp sound. He didn't even reach for it. "I can explain," he said quietly. "I'm listening." "It's not what you think." I looked at him, really looked at him. "What do I think?" I asked. "Tell me." "You think I was with someone," he said quickly, "but I wasn't. Not like that." "Then like what?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to his coffee cup. I could see them filling. His shoulders slumped. "I was at a friend's place," he finally said. "A guy friend. A guy friend I've never heard of. We used to date," he admitted. "Years ago. Before you. We stayed friends." My chest tightened. "And you didn't tell me because—" Because I knew you'd be upset, he said. I knew how it would look. How it would look, I repeated. So you lied. You said you were with your best friend. You said you were at a bar. You lied about where you were and who you were with. I didn't want to hurt you, he said, tears spilling now. I swear nothing happened. We just talked. He's going through a rough time. But you could lie to me, I said quietly. He covered his face with his hands. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me the truth, I said. You could have said, my ex needs someone to talk to. I would have understood that, but you chose to lie, and then you kept lying. I'm sorry, he sobbed. Please believe me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But something inside me had already fractured. Trust doesn't break loudly. It breaks silently, all at once. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't the full story. Not yet. We didn't talk much for the rest of that Saturday. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything I wanted to say felt too heavy, too sharp, too final. He tried. He hovered near me, asking if we could talk, apologizing again and again, promising that nothing physical had happened, that it was a mistake, that he panicked. Each time he opened his mouth, I felt something inside me tighten further. Not anger, disbelief. I needed space, not distance from him physically, but distance from the noise in my own head. I kept replaying the conversation at the kitchen table, the way his hands shook, the way his face went pale, the way the explanation came only after proof was placed in front of him. If he hadn't been caught, would he have told me? If no one had shared that location, would I still be believing his version of reality? That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept. His breathing was slow, steady, like nothing had changed. I wondered how someone could rest so easily after watching the foundation of a relationship crack. Sunday morning, I made a decision. I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days, I told him while packing a small bag. His face crumpled immediately. Please don't do this, he said. Let's talk it through. We are talking, I replied calmly. And what I know right now is that you lied to me, more than once. I need time to figure out if I can move past that. It was one mistake, he said desperately. I looked at him then. Really looked. Was it one mistake? I asked. Or was it one mistake I found out about? He didn't answer. I left that morning and stayed with a friend from work who had a spare room. He didn't pry. He just handed me a beer, pointed me to the couch, and let me exist in silence. On Monday, my phone rang again. It was his friend's boyfriend. He asked how I was holding up. I told him the truth. Not great. Then he hesitated. There's something else you should know, he said carefully. My girlfriend told me your boyfriend has been acting strange for a while, going out more, being secretive. She didn't want to say anything before because she wasn't sure. My chest tightened. What else did she say? I asked. She said there were other nights, he continued, when his location was at that same address, at least 3 times this past month. 3 times. The number echoed in my head long after the call ended. That's when I knew. This wasn't about one bad night. This wasn't about poor judgment or miscommunication. This was a pattern, and patterns don't break unless someone wants them to. After that call, I sat on the edge of the bed in my friend's spare room for a long time, staring at nothing. 3 times. At least 3 other nights he'd been at the same address. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't even crying. Something inside me had gone very still. I texted him that afternoon. We need to talk. I'm coming by tomorrow after work to get more of my things. The reply came almost instantly. Please don't give up on us. I stared at the screen before answering. You gave up on us when you chose to lie. He tried again. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. I typed slowly, deliberately. People also make choices. You chose to lie, repeatedly. After that, there was nothing. No reply, no explanation, just silence. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was replaying memories, but because my mind kept connecting dots I had ignored for months. The late nights, the secrecy, the way his friends had gone quiet around me, the way his family always spoke about freedom, about not feeling tied down. By Tuesday afternoon, I felt strangely calm, resolved. Then my phone rang again. This time, it was his best friend, the same woman whose social media story had started everything. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I need to tell you something, she said the moment I picked up. Her voice was tight, nervous, and I should have told you weeks ago. My heart sank. What is it? He's been seeing his ex, she said quietly. Not just hanging out, seeing her, for over 2 months. The words didn't hit like a punch. They landed like confirmation. I found out about a month ago, she continued. I saw them together at a restaurant. He begged me not to say anything. said he was confused and needed time to figure things out. 2 months, multiple lies, multiple nights. I'm so sorry, she said. I feel awful. After Friday, I realized I've been lying for him too, and that's not okay. You deserve the truth. I thanked her and ended the call. Sitting there in my car, phone still in my hand, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not heartbreak. Clarity. This wasn't a man caught in a moment of weakness. This was someone living a double life and letting everyone else carry the weight of his dishonesty. When I drove back to the apartment that evening, I already knew how the conversation would end. I just didn't know how much more truth would be dragged into the light before it did. The apartment looked exactly the same when I walked in. Same couch, same throw pillows, same framed photo of us on the shelf, smiling like people who didn't know what was coming. He was already there, waiting. Tissues on the coffee table, his eyes red like he'd been crying for hours. The room felt staged, like he was preparing for a reconciliation scene that existed only in his head. Can we please just talk? He said before I even closed the door. I took a slow breath. Your best friend called me today. His face changed instantly. What? Why would she call you? To tell me the truth, I said. That you've been seeing your ex for over 2 months. Not just talking, actually seeing her. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. She had no right. She had every right, I cut in. Someone needed to be honest with me, since you weren't going to be. It's not what you think, he said, voice cracking. It never is, I replied. How many times are you going to say that before it actually means something? He started crying harder then. Big, shaking sobs. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. We reconnected. I started feeling things again. I didn't know how to handle it. You handle it by being honest, I said quietly. You end one relationship before starting another. You don't lie to everyone and hope no one notices. I love you, he said desperately. I never stopped loving you. I looked at him, and for the first time I felt completely detached. That's not love, I said. That's fear of being alone. We sat there in silence after that. The weight of everything pressed down on me all at once. 3 years. Plans. A future I had assumed was solid. I felt hollow, not just hurt, but erased, like my reality had been rewritten without my consent. This was the lowest point. The moment when I realized the person I loved had been lying to my face for months, and that no amount of explanation could undo that. And yet, beneath the devastation, something else stirred. A quiet strength, a recognition that I deserved more than this. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry anymore. That surprised him more than anything else. I need to know the truth, I said calmly. All of it. Not the version that sounds better. The real one. He stared at the floor for a long time before answering. How many times were you at her place? I asked. A few, he muttered. How many? He swallowed. 4, maybe 5. And you lied about every single one. Yes. The word landed between us like a final nail. Were you sleeping with her? He hesitated. That pause told me everything. Once, he said finally. About 3 weeks ago. We'd been drinking. It just happened. I regretted it immediately. My chest tightened, but I didn't break. And you kept seeing her after that. I needed to figure out my feelings, he said weakly. About what? I asked. About me? About her? About what I wanted, he whispered. And what did you figure out? That I want to be with you, he said quickly. That I made a huge mistake. I nodded slowly. You did make a mistake, I said. And now I'm making a choice. Please, he begged. We can work through this. No, I said, we can't. I stood up and went to the bedroom, pulling out suitcases, gathering my clothes, my documents, the pieces of my life that had existed before him. He followed me silently, watching, crying, but not stopping me. You cheated, I said as I packed. You lied. You kept lying, even when I gave you chances to come clean. There's nothing to fix here. I love you, he said again. If you loved me, I replied, you wouldn't have done this. When I finally zipped the last bag, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the uncertainty was gone. As I walked toward the door, he asked quietly, what happens now? I didn't turn back. Now, I said, you figure out your life without me in it. And for the first time since this started, I knew I was going to be okay. I didn't move back into the apartment. I didn't change my mind overnight. I didn't send emotional messages or ask for explanations I already had. I stayed with my friend for the next 2 weeks, quietly looking for my own place, going to work like my life hadn't just imploded, pretending I was functional when I was really just surviving. He tried to reach me at first. Texts filled with apologies, long messages explaining how confused he had been, how much he regretted everything, how he would do anything to fix it. I didn't respond. Silence was the only boundary that felt strong enough. Word traveled faster than I expected. His friends started pulling away from him. The same people who had awkwardly smiled around me before were suddenly distant with him. Invitations stopped. Group chats went quiet. His family found out too. Not from me, from the fallout. I heard through mutual friends that his parents were furious. Not just about the cheating, but about the lies. About the way he'd embarrassed himself and hurt someone who had done nothing but trust him. The pressure he once let me absorb was now turned inward, aimed directly at him. The woman he'd been seeing didn't stay either. Once the secrecy was gone, so was the appeal. Without lies to hide behind, there was nothing left to hold it together. Meanwhile, I packed my life into boxes, clothes, papers, photos, the pieces of myself that had slowly been swallowed by us. I blocked him on social media, deleted his number, cut contact completely. Not out of spite, out of necessity. His friend's boyfriend reached out one last time. He told me his girlfriend felt awful about everything, but relieved the truth was finally out. I asked him to thank her for me. Without that location share, I might still be questioning my reality. I didn't feel victorious, I felt free. The truth didn't destroy him overnight. It just removed the safety net he'd been lying on. And I walked away without looking back. It's been 2 weeks since I walked away. 2 weeks since I packed my life into bags and closed a door I once believed I would walk through forever. I won't lie and say I'm healed. I'm not. 3 years is a long time to give someone your trust, your routines, your future plans. We talked about marriage, about buying a house, about the life we thought we were building together. Letting go of that doesn't happen neatly or quickly. But I also know this. I can't be with someone who lies that easily, someone who looks me in the eye and chooses deception over honesty, someone who only tells the truth when they're cornered. The worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was the lying, the way he rewrote reality to protect himself, the way he let me doubt my instincts while he lived a double life. I didn't confront him that night when I saw the story, and people have asked me why. The truth is, if I had confronted him immediately, he would have had time to craft a better lie. Waiting allowed the truth to surface on its own. It came from places I never expected, from people who chose integrity over loyalty. Sometimes patience is more powerful than immediate action. I didn't confront the woman he was seeing either. She wasn't my responsibility. He was. She was simply the person he chose. The choice itself was his. What I've learned is this. Trust isn't proven by words. It's proven by consistency, by actions that don't change when no one is watching. And if you're paying attention, people always tell you who they are, not loudly, not all at once, but in patterns. So yes, this is my story, not one of revenge or triumph, but of clarity. Sometimes you don't need to chase the truth. You don't need to interrogate or demand answers. Sometimes the truth comes quietly, when you stop ignoring what's right in front of you. And when it does, the bravest thing you can do is believe it and choose yourself.